my channel. I made this video for my grade 4 history students who have to stay at home for... Yeah, it's better to stay at home, okay? Yes, we would, seriously, this lecture is supposed to be in the classroom, and it would be wonderful if we meet again in the classroom, but until that time, until then, yeah. Okay, so this is my video. Last week we talked about the reign of Caesar Augustus. Now, it's been a while that I haven't explained to you guys what's going on in Palestine during this time. What happened with the Jews? What happened with the Israelites? Last time Mr. Jeremy kind of like give you guys the lectures is like when they were being exiled into Babylon. Oh no, I kicked my tripod. Sorry about that. Earthquake. Yeah. So, as they were exiled in the Babylon, the reason is like somehow because the Israelites they were being wicked. Okay, they're being the same with the neighboring nations, which is they're worshiping idols. In fact, they have like the one and truly God. They were being expected to stay faithful to the covenant. Now, if I have to speak a little bit further to the past, it has something to do with Abraham, as God have a covenant with Abraham that Abraham will become a great nation, that will become a blessing for other nations for themselves. The Israelites, they kept that covenant, okay? So far, we got Abraham, good. Now we got Moses, good. And then eventually, they got David. David is the king, okay? David is the king, and somehow, of course, he's a good king. Now David become like the ideal. If you guys remember about the word ideal, David become like the ideal king for the Jewish nations, okay, for the Jewish people, okay, and they are longing for to have another king like David, because during the time of like David, the Israelites they experienced what we call the golden age, but now not now, but in that kind of like last time I give you guys lectures. The Jews, they were now being exiled in Babylon. What's going on? Like, the hope is gone. They were being humiliated. They were being like discouraged. They were thinking like that's it. That will be the end of their nations, as they were being exiled, as they were being taken away from their homeland, and they were being moved into the Babylon. Things kind of like changed. After 70 years of captivity, they were being released by the Persian King Cyrus. Wait, King Cyrus or King Darius? King Cyrus, my bad. Okay, King Cyrus. They were being released, and then they were being allowed to return to their homeland to rebuild Jerusalem. The temple itself was destroyed when they were being taken by the Babylon, but now they rebuilt the temple. Why am I talking about this kind of thing? Because I haven't mentioned about the first part of the lecture. I should mention like this. The story of the good news about the coming of God's kingdom has finally arrived in a unique way. Okay, God enters the world of human through history, through incarnate as man, through Jesus Christ as human, as a personhood of Jesus. Now, it is interesting that somehow Jesus was born in Bethlehem in this midst of a kind of like we call it as the fullness of time. I think that is the Bible says. In the Galatians chapter 4. Verse 4, it says that, but when the time had fully come, God sent forth His Son, born of a woman, born under a law. Yeah, Galatians chapter 4, verse 4. Now, it's interesting that Jesus appears. Jesus was born in this kind of like complicated and an interesting moment in history, because Jesus was born in where the world culture collides. The world of the Greek, the world cultures of the Greek, the world cultures of the Romans, and the world cultures of the Judaism or the Jews. Now, sorry, I'm kind of like jumping here back and forth. Okay, now let's go back to this kind of like, to the Jews. Okay, as they were being released by the Persian king Cyrus to rebuild their Jerusalem, to rebuild their temple. They rebuild the temple that is already being destroyed, and they dedicate the temple for, of course, the temple for God. Now, somehow, ironically, like the Israelites, they did not experience a true freedom. They never had this kind of like another golden age like King David. Soon after they were being released, they were being conquered by the Greeks. Okay, they were being conquered by the Greeks. Remember about the story about Alexander the Great? Yeah, Alexander the Great, the Greeks, they have this kind of like, cold and hot relationship with the Jews. The good, yeah, the Alexander kind of like, asked the Jews to translate the Bible the Old Testament into Septuagint. But the hot or the evil, the bad thing is like somehow at the same time, like the Greek, they were being mean to the Jews. Like they will ravage the city, they will plunder the cities, and to make things worse, it's at this moment, like when Alexander the Great passed away, he was being replaced by one of his generals, someone by the name of like Seleucid. Now the Seleucid become an empire itself. The Seleucid control or conquered Palestine or conquered Jerusalem. Now the Seleucid empire idea is to Hellenize everyone to become, or Hellenize everyone in their land. I mean, what that means kind of like, to make everyone as civilized as Greek. Okay, eat like Greek, talk like Greek, dress up like a Greek. Okay, now the Israelites, okay, the Jews, now they have problem with that idea, because to eat like Greek, to dress like Greek, to worship like Greek, it against their law. Okay, for the Jews, for them, the one and only true God is only God. Okay, the Elohim. Okay, the Jehovah. Now, to worship Zeus is something that unthinkable. They would rather die, okay, to worship an other god. So what happened is they were being persecuted, and they were rebel against the Greek, led by these brothers, a bunch of brothers by the name of the Maccabees. Okay, now one of the famous Maccabees, one of the famous brothers, named someone by the name of Judas Maccabees. If you think like Judas is a kind of like a name associated with the one who betrayed Jesus, actually that name, it came from, used to be is a hero name, according to in this kind of like Jewish culture, Judas Maccabeus. Okay, so Judas Maccabeus lead the rebellion against the Seleucid, and they won. And the kind of like, it seems to be the Jews, they experience like what we call the golden age, the time like, the time that they will have another king like David. Well, yeah, no, because yes, they are free now they are now free from any conquerors, they are now free from the Greeks, but only for a short period of time. Because not long after that, the Jerusalem, Judea, were being conquered by the Romans through Pompey. Remember Pompey? 2 lectures ago we talked about Pompey. As Pompey expand the territory of the Romans all the way to the east, and then he intervened with the local kind of like political conflict, and Pompey somehow conquered Judea. And then like, Pompey or the Romans, they put the puppet rulers in Judea. Someone from Hasmonean dynasty, which is one of the famous one, is someone by the name of King Herod. Yes, Herod the Builder. Herod the Builder. Can he build? Yes, he can. He was known as the Herod the Builder because he built magnificent, a lot of like great building project, which is up to this day, I think we are still being amazed with his kind of like with his building project. But behind of his kind of like greatness, behind of his kind of like building project, Herod, he was known as the someone that is very insecure and someone that can be very, very cruel. He is very insecure of his position. He worries that someone will take away from him his position as the puppet rulers in Judea. In fact, he tried his best. He tried so hard to impress his master, which is the Romans. Okay, by building this kind of like great project. So just to kind of like that kind of attitude more kind of like, look at me, I built this big project, come on, I'm a good boy, something like that. Yeah. Now with this kind of like Herod is being introduced into this kind of like story. Now, here comes the story of wait, before we go to the story of like Jesus, okay, I'm going to describe to you guys the background, okay, the world where Jesus was born into. Now at this moment, the Jewish people, the Jews, they were returned into their kind of like the homeland in Jerusalem, in Judea. But the Jews itself, they were being divided into like four fractions, or four school of thoughts, four groups. Now, bear with me. Now it's gonna be complicated. Yeah, the first one is what we call it as the Sadducees. Okay, the Sadducees. I think you read it in the Bible. Now the Sadducees is the Jews who believe that the temple is everything for them. Okay, these are the Jews who believe that the Ten Commandments is the only commandment, is the only law that they have to follow, and there's no other law. Okay, they try to be live as a conservative. They try to live as traditional as it is according to the Ten Commandments. Because of that one, they were known as they don't believe in resurrection. They don't believe in resurrection. That's why they are Sadducees. They are sad. You see? You don't get it. Anyway, so now the Sadducees, they have this kind of like privilege given by the Romans to control the temple, and as long as the people do not rebel against the Romans, and they're fine. Okay, they're fine. The Romans will be fine. The Romans will be cool, even though the Romans conquered them. Now the second fraction is, we call it as the Pharisees. The Pharisees. Now the Pharisees is, I think you know the story about the Pharisees from a lot of like Jesus kind of like encounter with them. Jesus kind of like critics against them and Jesus parables. The Pharisees, they were this kind of like group of people that somehow they were being founded while the Jews were being exiled into the Babylon. The temple was gone. Now they were being formed to maintain the identity of themselves to maintain the identity of them as a Jews, okay, who are God's chosen people. Even though the temple was destroyed during the time of exile, they will make a certain rules, they will make a certain law that you have to strictly follow all of these rules, strictly follow all of this law in order for you to maintain the status of God's chosen people. Yeah, they were known for, I think, like the famous one, like when Jesus criticized them that they are like someone who have a big giant lumber of a plank on their eyes, but then again they don't see it, but then again they see someone's speck of dust on someone else's eyes. They're these are the Pharisees. Yeah, don't be too harsh on them. Okay, the Pharisees, they kind of like make these rules just to keep the identity. So the identity of them as the God's chosen people are still relevant with the culture, are still relevant with the changing world at the time. Now the third one, we call it as the Essenes. I am not sure how to pronounce it. Essenes. Okay, please pardon my pronunciation if you guys know how to pronounce it properly. Essenes. These are not written in the Bible, but the Essenes, they are known as the group of Jews who like believe that the world is evil. What's going on here? The world. I mean, the Judea. I mean, the Jews always being conquered, always being attacked by this kind of like foreign evil, idol worshipping kind of like nations over and over again. They think like the world is evil. Now, because the world is evil, they refuse to live in the world, and they decided to live in the other planet. No, just kidding. They decided to live isolated, alone. I mean, not alone. They live in the desert, away from the city, away from the evil world. Okay, they live as a hermit, and they will They will focus their life on on copying the scriptures, copying the Old Testament. Okay, they live in a small community. Probably reminds you of the monasticism, or living as monks, living as a small community far away. It's not written in the Bible, but I think John the Baptise, maybe he's not Essenes, but then again, the way he live his lifestyle, it resembles the Essenes. Now the fourth fractions. First we have like the Sadducees, we have the Pharisees, we have the Essenes. Now the fourth one, the fourth fractions in the Jewish society, we call it as the Zealots. Now the Zealots, these are the Jews who somehow they got bitter. They got bitter that somehow they always got conquered by this idol worshipping kind of like nations over and over again. These probably they are related with the Maccabeans revolt. Now they will do anything. They will do anything to defend, to protect their homeland, to defend and protect their way of living. Okay, they are. What would they do? They choose the violent way. They choose the terrorizing way. They don't mind to kill the Romans. They don't mind to launch a terror attack to whoever against them. Now, it's interesting that the Zealots, these are the most radical Jews that who choose that path. Now, interesting that they try to rebel against the Roman. By this time, they tried to rebel against the Roman. I think it happened somewhere around 3 or 2nd AD, or maybe no, wait, maybe around 1st AD. Now, it was a big rebellion, but then again, at the same time, it was an epic fail. It happened somewhere in Galilee. If you guys remember Galilee, it's the place where Jesus grew up, okay, as a child. Now, 2,000 of the zealot rebels were being put on the cross. 2,000. Imagine 2,000 of them, they died on a cross. For your information, the cross, the death on the crucifixion is only reserved for the non-Roman citizen. For the non-Roman citizen, only for the worst of criminals, for the terrorists and for the rebels. Yeah, it's so cruel. It's a very painful way to die. It's a very kind of like slow and painful way to die. It's so cruel that the Roman have to make the law that no Roman citizens are allowed to die like that way. Now, imagine like I'm pretty sure like Jesus already familiar about like what could happen. I mean, Jesus already familiar about like the what is like how horrifying it is to die on the cross. I remember about it. Think about it. 2,000 zealots were being crucified at the same time near Galilee, the place where Jesus grew up as a child. I'm pretty sure he knew. So now, what else that I need to add about the Jewish? I mean, about the Jews during the time like when Jesus was born. Okay. Now, okay. Let's just go back to about Herod. Okay. Now, Herod as a great builder. Okay, one of his famous building project that he rebuilt the second temple. The second temple. Now, the first temple was built by Solomon, if you guys remember my lectures about it. But then, during the time of like Babylon, it was being destroyed, completely destroyed. Now, yes, the early Jews who returned to Jerusalem, they rebuilt it, a simple one. Now, Herod, he rebuilt it even greater. He rebuilt it even bigger. Yeah, I will have pictures. I have the pictures there. Yeah. So this is like what in the Bible is being mentioned a lot, that when Jesus kind of like go into the temple and the disciples were being amazed with the size, with the grandeurs of the temple. And this is the same temple like when Jesus kind of like what he was angry with the people who kind of like exchanging kind of like money in that temple. Okay, he made the whip out of a rod, and then he claimed that somehow destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll rebuild it again. Yeah. It's the same temple here. Now Herod, he built that one. Now did I mention about that Herod? He's very insecure with someone who will take over his kind of like his position as a king. In fact, there was this kind of like famous story in the nativity story that he received 3 guests from the east. The 3 kind of like the 3 sage, is it sage or mage? Okay. That come to visit a newborn king. When Herod found out about this newborn king, then Herod, he killed every single male babies to make sure that this newborn king is killed, not going to replace him. Yeah, it also in the same story in the nativity story that Joseph and Mary took Jesus, fled to Egypt. Now, and another background that you need to know, it has been 400 years something that God did not send any prophet. God did not send any prophet, and if you are being asked who was the last prophet of the Old Testament, then I know this is a bit tricky. Sorry. The answer is John the Baptist. John the Baptist, he was born also at the same time. Well, not the same time. He was born earlier than Jesus. He was born as someone who paved the way out for the coming of the true messianic king, a king that like David. Now, remember that I mentioned about this kind of like four factions that somehow they don't like each other's. They kind of like somehow, yeah, they don't like each other's. And then one thing that they have one thing in common. Everybody are expecting for the coming of the kingdom of God. Everybody is expecting of the coming of a king like David, like a messianic king like David. Okay, that's what they have in mind. Someday there will be this kind of like awesome, great king like David that will kick all of these conquerors away from our homeland, and we will reach again our golden age. Now, and John the Baptist is the prophet who will prepare the way, who will announce the coming of this king. How did he do it? He will proclaim everyone to prepare the way by what? By repenting of their sin and by baptize. Okay, baptism and repentance. He kind of like unique. Okay, John the Baptist is considered to be very unique. He kind of like have a quirky, peculiar kind of like lifestyle, wearing kind of like clothes made out of a camel hair, eating kind of like wild honey, and also like eating kind of like locust. Okay, locust. There's a debate about it, like the definition of like locust, literally locust or something else. Okay. Now that was John, and then the question is, what kind of like kingdom that Jesus will bring? Is it Jesus going to bring like the Messiah, like kingdom like David? What kind of like good news that this the people expecting the God's kingdom of God? Now, like this, listen. These Jews, they think everyone and everyone at a time in Judea, they expecting that King David will return. Yeah, someone that will lead them as a nation, as a military leader, as a strong kind of like king. Now, will that be Jesus? Jesus will come as a Messiah, but will Jesus come as their expectation? Will Jesus come to kick the Romans out, to restore the injusticeness? I mean, to bring back the justice, to bring back the worship living. I mean, the true religious lifestyle of like worshiping true God. Will Jesus become the Messiah according to their expectation? Yeah, we're going to talk about it next week. Until next week, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.